Hi everyone, welcome to episode 6, the 7th episode of Python Live Lessons. My name is Sebastiaan Mathôt, and this is a weekly show about Python code and the general workflow around developing Python projects. And what we're going to cover today is continue basically where we left off during the last episodes, in which we developed a Python application called Markdown Code Exec. Hi. And our goal for today's episode is actually to publish this project that we previously developed on pip so that other people can install it. So what I mean by that, for those of you who are not super familiar, I think most people know what pip is. So there is a so-called a website, a repository called PyPI, the Python package index. Hi, welcome to the stream. This is where this is sort of the standard way the app store of Python libraries, so to say. So then if you want to install, you want to install some kind of Python package, say our Python package Markdown Code Exec, then you would type in the terminal pip install and then the name of the package that you want to install, and it would be downloaded and installed in your Python environment. This is the main way to install Python packages. Not the only way. There are also, for example, other ways like Anaconda is a Python environment that has its own package management tool. If you work under Ubuntu, Ubuntu has its own package management tool. So there are various ways to install Python packages. But pip install is by a landslide the most famous one, the best known one. And our goal is to basically allow users to install our package, Markdown Code Exec, in this easy way by typing pip install. And as you will see, that's quite easy to do. So how does that work? So I'm going to, just to get this out of the way, there has been a shift in the Python ecosystem where for a very long time, the normal way to actually package your software was to create a file called setup.py. And setup.py would basically do everything related to packaging. It would be the entry point, the script that would create a wheel package, which is the package format that Python uses. It would allow you to download the source code and run setup.py to install your package from source. It did a lot of slightly different jobs. And then there was a tool called Twine that would upload your package to PyPI. This is the old way, and actually quite recently-ish, the Python ecosystem has shifted to a emerging new standard. This probably will change somewhat, I think, over the next releases. But the idea is that there is a single project file, pyproject.toml, Tom's markup language, and a tool called flit. And together, this file that describes your project and flit that actually reads the file and builds a package and uploads the package to PyPI, together they actually perform the packaging operations. So that's what we're going to do. We're not going to create a setup.py, we're going to create a pyproject.toml and use flit. Now, as always, the main goal of doing this live is to engage with questions in the chat. So if there are some questions or comments or suggestions, please don't hesitate to post them in the chat if you are watching this live, of course. So let's actually get to work. Switch to the main scene. All right, so here we have our Python project that we created so far. So what did we do? Well, we created a nice command line app that we can execute and a Python module called Markdown Code Exec. If you're interested in that, just watch back to previous episodes because that's where basically we walked through the whole process of creating this library, this Python module. Now, and for today, the first step that we need to do, as I already said, what we need is a file called pyproject.toml. So let's just create an empty file called pyproject.toml. New file, pyproject.toml, and I will open it. And here in this file, all the stuff that we need to describe our project, that's where it will go. So it will contain the metadata. things like where the documentation lives, who the author is, things like that. So let's put it aside, up, and then in the browser, I will go, and this what you're looking at now is the documentation of flit. So it's a bit messy, I'm not gonna lie, the ecosystem around packaging Python packages is a bit messy. But this, if you Google for flit and pyproject.toml, you will find this documentation. And to a very large extent, it just describes the stuff that you need to put here in this pyproject.toml file. So at the top, it just says, okay, for any new project using flit, it will look like this. So and we are building a new project using flit, and they're saying, if that's the case, just copy paste this into your pyproject.toml. What does this do? I don't know exactly, but basically they try to make flit also backwards compatible with older packages, and then you could indicate other things in here. But for our purpose, we just want to sort of look towards the future and copy their recommendation. This is the metadata that we need to have in any case, without really understanding what it means. This is at the top. This is a bit of black magic, but for the rest, the stuff that we're going to put in our pyproject.toml is pretty easy. It is kind of sort of simple metadata that describes basic properties of our Python project. So let's also just copy this and put it in there. So this of course is related, is metadata for sort of an example project file. For an example Python project, but we need to just adjust it accordingly, right? So the name is not AST check, but it is markdown code exec. So the name refers to the name of the package as it will be called on PyPI if we upload it. The authors, well, that's me, of course. So my name is Sebastiaan Mathôt. Email address, the one that I use for this stuff in any case, coxai.nl. There is a README file. We are actually not using a rich text. We are using a readme.md, right? So here you see we have our readme.md that we actually created in the previous episode. And that is our README file. We have a license that indicates what the license is under which our module should be distributed. Here they're saying an MIT license. I prefer the GNU General Public License, not because that's a very well-informed choice, but just because that's kind of what I'm used to. I'm not super familiar with the differences between all the licenses, but the MIT license is a little bit more permissive, and the GPL is sort of the standard open source license. So I just copied this string. I had that prepared in a little notebook. And this string that you have here, this very long thing, is the standard way, the standard machine readable description of that license. That's what it is. So you need to make sure that it actually matches this standard machine readable format, which you can just find if you Google. Then it requires Python version larger than 3.5. That's to me fine. But of course you can adjust it, right? If you have other requirements. And then there is a dynamic attribute, and it says version and description are dynamic. What does that mean? Well, it means that the version will be read from the init of the module, the init.py of the module. And description will similarly be read from the init.py of the module. So let's actually open init.py. And then you see this is the version. So Flit will be smart enough to basically read this and put it in, use that as the version. What is the description? Well, the description is the docstring of the init. So if I here say, I'll just copy it. Execute, right? So during the last episode, we looked at docstrings, and we saw that the docstring is something between these triple quotes that is generally under a function definition. But you can also have docstrings for modules and classes and other things. And this right here is a docstring for the module. and flit will actually read that automatically and use that as the description. All right, so, and I prefer, should say executes, not execute. Well, all right, so, and let's also bump actually the version, because now we're going to do something new. Okay, so that's what will be used. That's how flit will know the version and the description. Pretty easy, right? And pretty well described also. Now, then we can say that our module had dependencies, when we could also create a list of dependencies here. We could say, for example, all right, numpy. Actually, Markdown code exec doesn't have any dependencies, so we can leave this empty. But you could specify that here, and that would mean that if people pip install your package, all those dependencies would be installed along with the package. What other things can you specify? Well, one thing that is important, you can specify also links to documentation, etc. But one thing that is important for our package and for many other packages is an entry point. So I will say project.script, and then I will say markdown code exec is, and then I'll say markdown. I will type this and then explain what it means. Up. So we have a command line application, and we want our flit, when we build the package and when we pip install it, we want actually our application to be available as a command line app. So we don't only want to be able to import Markdown code exec as a Python library, but we also want to be able to execute it as a command line app. And we want the name of the command line app to be markdown-code-exec. And what we want to happen is that when we call Markdown code exec, that from the Markdown code exec module and the submodule _app, the app function is called. That is what this means right here. So if I open that the app module here, make it full screen, you see that we have an app function, and this app function is what you would call the entry point of our program. So basically calling the app function is the same as executing our command line app. Now, and what will happen now? If we define that here, flit will automatically build a script, and that script automatically executes this function that serves as our as our entry point. That's basically the logic behind it. So that is very important. There are a few other things that are somewhat important, such as, for example, we want to have some project URLs. I will copy it from my notebook. So what do these do? Well, basically they describe where the users can find more information about the project, right? So the documentation lives on GitHub, and the source code actually also lives on GitHub, right? So we don't have a separate documentation site, but say that you would have a big project that has its own documentation site on readthedocs.io, for example, then you could put that here. Okay, so now we have a pyproject.toml file that in principle has all the information that we need to build our package. There are a few things that are going to go wrong, few things we still need to do before we can actually execute it. So let's actually switch to an editor here, or a terminal. Here we have it. And if I would type now flit build, that's basically the command that builds it up. It would say, all right, config error, description file readme.md does not exist. So I'm missing a few things. So let's put this aside. Oh yeah, here it is. Readme, it's capitalized, so it should be lowercase. Readme.md, like this. Up. If I try to execute it now, oh wait, clear. Try to be up. Flit build up. It is doing some things now. Let me make it full screen. But it is still generating an error. So let's try to understand where that error comes from. So flit, by the way, is a Python package that you can pip install. So at some point in the past, I said pip install flit, and then I had flit, and that's the tool that I'm using now. What it is saying here is, let's run it again, flit build. multiple files or folders could be markdown code exec. And then we're running into the issue, actually, that if we go switch back to the editor, I should put them, I'll try to keep it as structured as possible, right? You see that I told the PyProject that we want to have markdown code exec, but that could actually refer either to this Python file, markdown code exec.py, or to this folder, markdown code exec, with the init inside it. And that conflict is not acceptable to flit, so we need to be a little bit more explicit. How am I going to solve it? Well, what I actually wanted to point towards is this folder, so I will just rename this file to actually use hyphens instead of underscores. Up. All right. And if I execute up, try to make it structured, flit build, up. All right. Now it is actually doing something, but it is still giving an error message. It's saying that there are untracked or deleted files in the source directory. And now we're running into another sort of property of flit, namely that flit, if you have a Git repository, it absolutely wants all the stuff in the Git repository to be clean. Otherwise, it will not work. I feel that's a little bit finicky, to be honest, but okay. So if we say git status now, then we see that our Git repository is actually not clean, because we have deleted or actually renamed this markdown code exec.py to the version with underscores. We added some things in the init.py, and we added the pyproject.toml file. So all of those things are not clean. So we need to actually sort of commit those changes. So as I usually do, you remember from previous episodes where we started working with Git 2 episodes ago, I think. I tend to use Git GUI for this. I will open it. So I'm not going to go into a big explanation of how Git works. Oof, and we have the ugly font again. Well, I will simply all the changes that there are, I will stage them. So here in the red field, that's where all the things live that Git doesn't know about. In the green field, those are all the changes that we want to give a name by committing them. You can go back to the Git episode and learn about that. And I will say prepare for packaging, commit. And if I now go back to the terminal, so the slash simply means carriage return, so we start at the beginning of the line, so it's a bit clearer for you. And if I type flit build, now you see that we actually get a whole bunch of green messages, and it says a bunch of things, right? But the most important things that it says is that we built sdist markdown code exec.tar.gz and built a wheel markdown code exec .wheel. Now, the .wheel package, that's the standard Python package that you actually use when you pip install stuff. And we now have it. It's automatically built for us. Let's take a look. If I go switch back to Rapunzel. Now, under dist, well, let's say not use git ignore, under dist. In that folder, there are now 2 packages here. One called .wheel and one called .tar.gz. And that is basically the end product of our packaging process. That is our Python package. Of course, users can at this point not yet pip install it, right? Because it only lives on my computer. So no one will be able to say pip install markdown code exec. But we can now very simply actually upload it to pip, to PyPI, I should say. So let's take a look at how that works. So the next step will be to say, here, I will say flit upload. That's everything. That will actually work for me. But but of course, there is no black magic involved. You need to actually undertake a few steps before you can upload something to PyPI. The first step is to actually upload something, to actually create an account on PyPI. So I have done so. And it's very easy, it's free, and you just create an account on PyPI, and then you have a username and you have a password. That's how easy it is. Then What you need to do, let me actually switch back to the browser. I feel like I'm switching a lot back and forth between different things. I hope that's not too confusing for you, but it's just because we're managing a lot of different things, right? The terminal, the editor, the documentation, and I'm going back and forth between all of those. So let's go back up to the browser, and here on the documentation of Flit, you see they have a section called uploading. Oh, Flit, yeah, controlling package uploads. I click on that. And then they say, well, you know, you should have a file called py.pyrc, .pypyrc, and in .pypyrc, you basically indicate your credentials. So you say, the only thing that you really need is this. The other stuff indicates, okay, if you want to make use of the test server, you can do that. But if you just want to upload to PyPI directly, then you have this. You have a repository that is a fixed link to PyPI. You have a username that is your username on PyPI. And you have a password that they don't show here, but you should have it, that contains your password. I'm not going to show you my PyRC because it contains my password, but I have a file like this on my computer in my home folder. And when I say flit upload, it will work and it will be able to upload to PyPI because I have an account on PyPI and I have this .pyrc file in my home folder. Yeah, so let's actually see how that works. So if I now here, if I say flit upload, Flit will first build the package as we did before. And then it will try to upload it to PyPI. And I'm doing this live, as you know, so let's hope that it actually works. And as soon as it has worked, we will be able to pip install it. We will be basically done. Let's see. Oh, sorry, it's not flit upload. It is flit publish. There we go. Okay. And you see, there it goes. It actually first built everything and then uploaded it by default to the normal PyPI repository, so not the test PyPI repository. For beginners, I would say first play around with the test PyPI, otherwise you end up uploading a lot of junk to the actual PyPI. You can actually, no one will stop you from doing that, but it's a bit impolite maybe. But here I actually uploaded it immediately to the regular PyPI. And if I now switch to the browser, and I go to pypi.org. I will log in. And you will see here are all my projects. I have lots of projects on PyPI for your installation pleasure, so to say. And in Markdown Code Exec is the latest one. So if I click on View, you see that actually it will have a very nice README that is copied from the README on my computer. It will have a link to the source and to the documentation, etc. And basically it will have all the stuff that a nice Python project needs. Can do with a little bit of polish maybe. I think the README can be a little bit nicer, but you get the general idea, right? All of this has been automated. Bam, just flit publish and off you go. All right, now, and then to actually show you how easy it is to install it, I can say, well, let me switch actually to my home folder because otherwise, otherwise you might get confused between the version of Markdown Code Exec that I have actually coded on my computer and the version that I'm now going to install. So I'm going to install pip install Markdown Code Exec. Bam. There we go. Easy peasy. Now remember, if I now say Python and I say import Markdown Code Exec, that will work. Now we're importing the module. The version of the module that I just installed through pip. And if I want to call it as a command line, I can say Markdown Code Exec --help. Bam. And we get actually the command line script. So we see you see that we're now actually basically running the app function inside the module, nicely, sweetly encapsulated in a script, markdown code exec, that I can simply execute as a regular command line application. Now that's it, actually. We have created a let's actually switch back so we can see it again. We've created a pyproject.toml file. We added some metadata in the pyproject.toml. You see it's pretty easy, there's not that complex, all the stuff that you need to put in there. The main thing to know if you want to have a command line app is that you need to indicate this, you have to have this project.script section that has an entry that points to the correct function in your code. And then it will automatically be sort of exposed as a command line app. You can specify dependencies that will be automatically installed. There are no dependencies here because markdown code exec doesn't have dependencies. But if it did, we would have specified them here and they would have been automatically installed. And that's it. So I think to close this off, let's actually tag a nice new release. How am I going to do that? Right. There we are. So git status, everything is clean. I'm going to say git tag release 0.3.0. Refer back to the Git tutorial if you're unsure what this means. And I'm going to say git push origin release 0.3.0. And now, in addition to uploading the package on PyPI, we've created a release tag on GitHub for the exact same code, right? So that we keep everything nicely synchronized. All right. Well, that is about it, actually. In less than 30 minutes, we were able to go from just the Python module to actually uploading it to PyPI and installing it. I hope you see that it's not that complex. What I've shown is also the up-to-date way to do it. So a lot of information that you will find online involves the setup.py, which by now has been deprecated. For those of you who are watching this back offline, thank you for watching. This actually also concludes the Python Live Lessons episode. We've now done in 7 episodes seen a basic application from the very first conception, the code sketch in episode 0, the first episode, to now actually having a pip installable package in the 7th episode, episode 6. And that basically is a nice moment, I think, to conclude this series of Python Live Lessons, or at least this, let's call it a season. Maybe I will make another season at some point, but let's say that this is the end of season 0. For those of you who are actually watching live, I'm happy to take some questions or to answer to some comments that you might have. Thank you very much for watching.